Welcome to the Iguana Chronicles, the podcast where we dive into the wild world of South Florida's invasive iguanas. I'm your host, Mike Ronquillo, and each week we'll explore the fascinating history of these creatures, share thrilling tales from the front lines of iguana removal, and provide essential tips for homeowners and business dealing with these scaly invaders. Get ready for an adventure in wildlife management and education right here on the Iguana Chronicles. Welcome, guys, to the Iguana Chronicles podcast. This specific episode is going to be all about iguana trapping. So iguana trapping has been a very effective method that we've used throughout the years in service. We use a lot of different size traps. We use smaller ones for the smaller iguanas, larger ones for the bigger iguanas, and we even use a repeating trap to get more than one iguana at a time in these traps. And depending on the type of iguanas you have on your property, those are the traps that we will use. We use the smaller ones for the 12-inch iguanas and the bigger ones for the much larger iguanas. The trapping is always a good method to use. It's like having a 24-hour employee on your property. So we'll set these traps up in specific areas where you have high iguana activity to capture these iguanas. It's always important to place these traps in spots where, you always see iguanas. Let's say if you have a certain bush or a certain area where iguanas are lounging at, or a certain spot that iguanas are eating these trees or these flowers or fruits, we'll put traps around these spots to capture these iguanas. Like I mentioned in one of our episodes, you need to check these traps every 24 hours by law. The iguanas could, pretty much suffer in these traps with no food, no water. So, we try to, get these iguanas out as fast as possible as soon as we capture these iguanas. Our repeating traps have been super successful in many properties. What we ended up doing is we ended up getting some of our old traps and disassembling them and putting them back together as larger traps customly. We'll grind off certain areas of the trap and make trap doors for them to go in through. So the way repeating traps work is it'll have 1 to 6 doors on this trap, and more than one iguana could go in at a time. So when the iguana goes through the first door, the little door closes behind them, and then the next one do the same thing. So it's a repeating trap because iguanas can repeatedly get trapped in these traps. So these custom ones we've made have been a game changer for us, to be honest. So we had all these old traps that weren't really working that well due to the old mechanism. So we decided, why get rid of these traps? Let's just let's reuse them, and that's exactly what we did. So we got all the old traps, we disassembled them. We made new ones, painted them as well. We try to paint them as an olive green color, so it's not an eyesore on your property. And we built these traps with either 2 doors, 3 doors, 4 doors, up to 6 doors, it's a massive trap. We call this trap the Iguana decolonizer, because we decolonize iguana populations with this massive trap. I remember using that trap for the first time at a property. This client just installed peanut grass along their backyard. So they had a bunch of slits on their concrete for a new design they did in the backyard, and they installed this peanut grass on these slits, where most people actually install artificial grass on these spaces. But he decided to use peanut grass because it has little yellow flowers. What he didn't know is that iguanas love peanut grass. Like, they love munching on this plant. So he called us out there and he said, look what's happening. When we arrived, there was like 6 or 7 iguanas there in his back patio area just eating this grass. And I could see just the disappointment in his face. He spent thousands of dollars on these plants, and it was hundreds of these little peanut grass. They come in 1-gallon pots, and the iguanas are just there, just munching and munching, just looking at us and just eating these plants. So this guy, he was furious. So he goes, "This is the problem we have. Look at these iguanas, they're eating all my plants. What do we do?" I told him, it's a little bit too late, but the best thing is always to contact an iguana removal specialist to discuss what plant options are the best method to use to not attract iguanas and for them not to eat your plants. A lot of people don't know this. We're gonna have a full episode to talk about that. What plants should you and should you not install around your home. So we saw these iguanas in his backyard just munching and eating all these plants, and I go, I have the perfect thing for this property. It's the Iguana decolonizer trap. He goes, what the hell is that? I'm like, let me show you. So we go to our truck, we pull out this massive trap. He's like, wow, that thing is massive. I'm like, yeah, you're gonna see what's gonna happen in a day or two. So we placed this trap, we loaded it with food, a ton of fruits inside, and within a day, we were trapping 10, 15 iguanas at a time. He was ecstatic. He was super happy. We were catching all these iguanas. He's like, man, I wish I would have known about this before I installed these plants, but I'm really happy you guys came out and you guys are trapping all these iguanas. So this property in particular, it's in in Coconut Grove, I think it is. I mean, it is infested with iguanas. He had other plants as well that they were eating, and it was crazy the amount of iguanas that were just on a seawall and around his plants, just eating and defecating nonstop, continuously. So we've been serving that property for the last 2 months, and we removed there over 50 iguanas in this one particular property. So this massive trap has worked there very, very effectively. For other properties, we can use such large traps, so we'll incorporate other types of traps around their home to, capture iguanas efficiently. So when we provide iguana trapping, like I mentioned before, we'll place these traps in strategic places around your home to make sure we have the best results. We try not to install these traps like on the borders of properties due to catching other native species. For example, possums. Possums love going around borders of properties searching for, for food, for garbage, and sometimes these possums will get trapped. So when we implement this iguana trapping, we tell the client, hey, look, this is what we're going to do. We're going to place these traps in these spots. We just need for you to call us when one gets trapped. So we get out there and just remove whatever is in there. And that's the best method. That way the iguanas can be, trapped in there for a long time. And it works, it works great. For the baby iguanas, we have smaller traps we use, and they're about a 12-inch trap that's extremely sensitive. So when these little baby iguanas go into eat the fruit, they step on the little latch and it just traps these baby iguanas. So that trap works extremely well for the baby iguanas. When you have iguanas on your roof, it's a problem. These iguanas are up there constantly getting sun to regulate their body temperature, since they're cold-blooded reptiles. So they'll use access points around your property, like trees or palm trees or bushes, to get on the roof to sunbathe. If you have a hole or if you have a cracked tile, they can make this area their new home. So what we like to do is, once we talk to the resident and we do an assessment of the property, we'll place these traps on the roof on a good spot where we know for a fact where we're going to catch the iguana. And that's exactly what's happened. We'll look on the roof and we'll find any areas where the iguanas might be hiding at. For example, we had this one property, I think it was in Weston, that this iguana will come up there every day, will defecate, and it would just go into a tile that was cracked to live up there pretty much. So during the day, it will go out, forage for food and water and all that stuff. And I'll go up there to sunbathe, and when the sun goes down, it will hide in this tile. So in that case, we'll place a trap on the roof on that certain exact spot with a trail of food leading into the trap. So when the iguana comes out, he sees the one piece, he eats the other piece, until he makes it all the way in the trap, steps on the latch, and he gets trapped. For traps in hot areas, we tried to put kind of like a burlap cover over the top of the trap because it gets extremely hot. And what happens is the iguana start pretty much overheating, and in our opinion, has kind of like a heat stroke and they could die. So we try to do everything as humane as possible. We are called Humane Iguana Control. So that's one of the methods that we use when we have traps in very warm, hot places. We'll put these traps and we'll put the burlap over it just to do it as humane as possible. But this goes along with iguanas around pools. We'll put the traps in certain spots where they're constantly defecating at, and we'll catch these iguanas. So the iguana trapping is a great method to use. There's some properties that don't allow it, unfortunately, due to liability reasons. So we will do other methods to remove the iguanas instead of using traps. When you use traps in places like commercial properties, schools, hotels, it can be kind of difficult to place traps in certain areas because you have to hide these traps. They can be visible. Again, due to liability reasons. You don't want a child going up to a trap and touching and it closes on his finger. The traps we use are not deadly. We don't have no deadly traps, but the door closing on a finger, it can hurt. So it's always important when we install these traps, to make sure we put them in specific places. All our iguana techs, they know exactly how to assess a property and where to put these traps. Once again, we always try and see where the most iguana activity is at, to make sure we put these traps on a spot that we know is going to catch them for sure. So, that's one of the methods that we use with our iguana removal services. The traps have worked great throughout the years. We removed thousands of iguanas using these traps, and we're super proud of our repeating traps. These traps have been a huge game changer for many properties that are super highly infested. So when you hire a company like ours to provide services, the iguana trapping is a great method to use to capture iguanas fast, to get them out, at least the larger population, until you get under control. So that's pretty much all we want to talk about for the iguana trapping on this episode. If you guys have any questions about iguana trapping, our methods, and why it's so important to use these traps on certain properties, just send us a message, and we'll bring it back up on another episode and we'll talk more about it. on this podcast, we want to make sure that we're connected with all our listeners and viewers. So if you guys have any questions, any concerns, or if you wanted us to talk about something certain on a certain episode we're going to have, just send us a message, and we hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Until next time, thanks for joining the Iguana Chronicles. Thanks for tuning into the episode of the Iguana Chronicles. We hope you enjoyed the deep dive into the challenges and triumphs of managing South Florida's iguana population. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review wherever you listen to this podcast. Stay informed and stay proactive. Together, we can make a difference. Until next time, keep an eye out for those iguanas.